So as much as we typically talk about mechanical watches on this channel, I do like to pepper in some different content around digital watches because I am also a fan of digital timekeepers as well. And in this video, we're gonna be focusing on some of the most iconic digital watches of all time. What are the digital watches that had an ability to transcend the category, impact pop culture, have historical impact, or maybe are delivering some element of their design that have some staying power in the process, whether that's through the technology or through their design themselves. Now, since this is the most iconic of all time, these watches are going to be probably some familiar faces, but what we're going to be doing in this video is give some of the reasons behind their iconic nature, why it's justified, and go through some of my favorites from this tier of digital watchmaking. So let's kick things off with one of my personal favorites, and it's a simple design, but if you're talking about staying power, this absolutely has to be on here. This is the Hamilton Pulsar, or often known as now, the PSR. So the PSR, the Pulsar, was the first mass-produced LED digital watch back in the 1970s. This was introduced in 1972, and Hamilton recently updated the design in the last 5 years. Very simple in its presentation, one single button on the right side of the case, and you're in business, you get that backlight coming in. But what's often not talked about is the fact that this was a watch that was seen as a luxury timepiece back in the 1970s. An 18-karat gold Pulsar back in the 1970s retailed at $2,100. If you adjust for inflation, that is $15,000. So just to put that in other terms, about the same retail price of a Daytona in today's market. Further, Roger Moore wore a Pulsar as well on the wrist as James Bond. The PSR was unveiled again in 2020 underneath the Hamilton branding. You have stainless steel, you have gold, you have black PVD. They also did a unique matrix version with a green backlight. The watch wears pretty well too. You're at a 40.8 millimeter diameter, lug to lug of 46 millimeters, and a thickness of 13.5 millimeters with water resistance of 100 meters. This watch does not have nearly the same amount of features as others on this list, but in terms of my own design and specification that I enjoy, I just love the way that this watch looks. And there's just something I can't put words to. It's simplicity, it's retro styling. It looks almost futuristic, but also retro in this combination of looking back to the past. So this watch was probably one of the leading watches that got many people into even mechanical watchmaking back in the 80s and 90s. This is the Timex Ironman Classic. So the Ironman is something you'll find in department stores. You'll find also on the wrists of athletes as well. But it was released in 1984, and it was a development Timex had in working with the Ironman Triathlon event and developing a digital watch, and in the process really boosting sales within the company. This watch has been used by athletes, Navy SEALs, nurses, and anyone needing a capable digital watch. And the Ironman really took off because of this. Its versatility and its ability to be available for well under $50 even to this day. The other contrast with this piece is it wears very well on the wrist. You almost don't feel as if this watch is on your wrist when you're wearing it. It has some scaled down design cues and also features that line up with some of the use cases that we mentioned. You have that oversized digital display, you have a retro 80s look in the process, and a long list of functions with a focus on a chronograph. Since you're talking about a triathlon, it still does come with 100 meters of water resistance and gets that Timex Indiglo illumination as well. There are many different flavors of the Ironman. I really do like this Japanese limited quantity piece. It's known as the Ironman 8 Lap. Really neat, retro, and just feels like a vintage electronic device as much as it is a watch. Now let's move along to a watch that also, if you're talking about sales numbers, this is right there with the best of them, if not at the leading front position. This is the Casio F91W. This was a watch introduced in 1989, and since the F91W has achieved multi-million-dollar selling status thanks to its affordability, ease of use, reliability, and 7-year battery life. Now it's quoted that this is the best-selling watch, not of the smartwatch variety, ever in the history of watchmaking. People have estimated 120 million units have been sold of the Casio F91W. But this watch is still available under $20. It's almost inflation proof, or at least feels like it. I've been talking about this watch for now almost a decade, and it just has always sat in the same position. That's part of the staying power of its design. But the design itself is also iconic. You have so much available to you in a very small package. You have a range of functions, including a 1/100th of a second stopwatch, day and date indication, 12 and 24-hour time timekeeping, a daily alarm, an hour chime that can be toggled on or off. I remember the first time getting one of these and I had the toggled on and I was up in the middle of the night and like I just hear this thing going off. It can be pretty annoying if you don't know how to turn that off. So just go through the steps and make sure you can handle that. But it's pretty useful also when you're in meetings and maybe you just need to have a nice reminder for yourself. And in addition to that, getting a backlight, but probably one of the weakest backlights on the list here today. And I think the other thing I like about this is watch is almost like snob proof. You just recognize it as this appreciated object, but is still under $20 for a price even in 2025. Now this is a pop culture classic. It has to be on a list for the most iconic digital watches of all time. This is the Casio Calculator, specifically the CA53W-1. So the Calculator watch is a relic of the 1980s that has just persisted for decades since. Now it started with the release of the C80 Calculator watch in 1980, undercutting the price of far more expensive options from Pulsar. The C80 utilized rubber buttons instead of a stylus, making operation far easier by comparison. And then the CA53W released in 1988, reaching iconic status after it was worn on the wrist of Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future Part 2. A version of the Marty McFly watch still exists today for fans of the film, and the CA53W retails for just under $30 and can be found for much cheaper than that as well. There are very few watches that are able to go past the watch enthusiast community nowadays and still be a part of pop culture discussion. And this is one of those watches. I was even having a conversation recently and somebody knew that I was into watches, but they don't know anything about watches. And they busted out like a calculator watch joke because that's really all they knew as a reference of things that they had an understanding of in the world that I am in. So it goes to show that this is a watch that beyond just those that are enthusiasts, you think about the Apple Watch, it's like on that level of making an impact in the common cultural zeitgeist. That is why this calculator watch is so timeless. And also in terms of what it's doing, it's so quirky and weird. It does have the staying power in that regard. You look at all the watches that's gonna be listed in this video, I don't think anybody can match the doing of calculations on your wrist. I can only imagine teachers in the 1980s and 90s that were terrified of these watches and students trying to pull a fast one and being able to cheat on a test. This next piece was recently discontinued, believe it or not, at least the modern edition of this design. But again, pop culture, design being so different compared to the rest on this list, it has to be here. This is the Seiko Arnie. So the Arnie was originally introduced in 1982 as an analog digital Seiko H558-5000. It was worn by Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando and Predator, building its iconic status and also being now referred to as the Arnie as a result. The watch is pretty burly in its design. It's 45 millimeters. It looks like this beast, but one of the biggest surprises, if you've ever tried this watch on, it's not something that you can just say is exclusively good for people that have the wrist size of Mr. Olympia. Like, you can wear this watch even if you think you might not be able to. It's one that you have to give a shot to before you write off completely. And part of this is just because the size of the case, it has this plastic shroud that makes it feel as if it would be bigger in these wired lug designs, but you put it on the wrist, wears great. Also was one of the first watches to combine analog time as well with digital display. You have chronograph, alarm functions, and then the modern Seiko version of this watch known as the SNJ025, which again was recently discontinued, which is solar powered and features a unidirectional timing bezel, a protective shroud, as I mentioned, 200 meters of water resistance, and a really cool way of how the handset will get out of the way of the digital time display at the 12 o'clock position, so you can see it while you're setting the time. It's just neat how the analog display and the digital display work in tandem with one another. So G-Shocks need to be on this list, and this is the traditional form of a G-Shock. The modern model is known as the DW5600 case, but we're just gonna talk about the DW family in general at this square case size. This was the very first G-Shock design case. It was the DW5000C. It was introduced in 1983, and the 5600 is the remaining form of that original concept. And from that original concept, you're getting many of those characteristics that were part of the design philosophy. You have the resistance to high impact, water resistance of 200 meters now in the common package. It also can survive many torture tests. We included dropping a watch out of helicopters within the 5600 case, and these watches are remarkably robust. The original test called on a 3-story drop or 10 meters, but it far surpasses that in our test of dropping them out of helicopters. The DW5600E T-1V boasts features like mineral glass crystal, a stopwatch, a countdown timer, multiple alarms. You have an automatic calendar, 12 and 24-hour display, and that glowing blue electroluminescent backlight. These have been used by astronauts, law enforcement, Navy SEALs, and anyone who needs an inexpensive functional watch that can outlast just about anything. The modern package of this design now exists in hundreds of variants, limited editions, and collaborations ranging from basic models to full metal versions costing over $1,000. So I was going back and forth on this one. Should I include it? Should I not include it? But I decided to include this watch in this video just because even in just over 5 years, it's been able to be one of the best-selling G-Shock models. This is known as the GA2100, also sometimes known as the Casioak. This was unveiled right before COVID, and it was a different time when this came out. When this was unveiled, you saw the integrated sports trend going crazy with these octagonal cases like the Royal Oak. And then you see this watch for under $100 come on the scene, had the form that many people wanted, but did it at a price in the robust nature that comes with the G-Shock that was hard to beat. And for a short period, these were watches that you really struggled to get. They were sold out everywhere. People were like flipping these watches. It was just a really weird time. And even now, years later, there's been so many different models. Now you can get them much more easily, but still, even to this point, some of the best-selling G-Shocks and in the modern catalog are probably the ones that have had the most impact of any G-Shock in the last 10 years easily. Part of this is just the way that these watches wear. You have a 45.4 millimeter case diameter and then a lug-to-lug of 48.5 millimeters. It's one of the best wearing G-Shocks outside of the 5600 case. It's got that ability to work on so many wrists, 200 meters of water resistance, Casio quartz caliber on the inside, analog digital display. And I think all of these factors contributed to these becoming the G-Shock for those that don't necessarily like G-Shocks. They were able to check off these boxes and still be more in line with what a mechanical watch enthusiast would be looking for if they could combine all these elements and think about what would the G-Shock for me look like. This was the one that was able to figure out the formula to make it work to a different segment of G-Shock buyers, while still, of course, those people that love G-Shocks also were all on board for this one as well. Now we look at another fan favorite. This is the DW9052 from G-Shock. This was first launched in 2012, and the DW9052 answers the needs of military units looking for even more robust features for a G-Shock. It has an oversized 43 millimeter case, but this goes to show the back and forth of how different watches can wear, even though the diameters are all over the map and they can create a totally different presence. G-Shocks can be measured on the same degree as other conventional analog mechanical watches. But with this, you have this recessed crystal that was also protected by the larger surrounds of this cushion style case. You also had hinge lugs, which made for a better fit compared to other G-Shocks. This is the secret sauce of this formula that makes it work. In addition, you have those large armored rectangular buttons and a G backlight button up front. This was also a huge hit with the armed forces and law enforcement communities. And further, this was actually a standard issue for US Navy divers, even getting its own NATO stock number. Now we shift to a classic from the G-Shock family. This is the DW6900. So this was launched back in the 1990s, 1995 to be specific. It has a 50 millimeter diameter, making a big visual statement. You also have a round case, really retains though all of the functionality of the smaller case DW5600, while adding a few features that make this easier to use. One of the most useful features is that big G button, which now has become a style design of many G-Shocks, making it easy to activate the backlight even with gloves on. The DW6900 places more emphasis on the chronograph functions with the triple graph display, a key design highlight, and the 6900, along with some other select G-Shocks, have been flight qualified by NASA, having been on board for several space missions. And there's even a limited edition all-white NASA version that I like a lot. You're getting all the different sets of features here, and another one that I really like is the flashing alarm display that can be toggled on or off. Many variations are available today, including metal bezel models and several limited editions. So now let's jump up to the luxury tier, and maybe the most iconic luxury digital watch this is probably it. This is the Breitling Aerospace. The Aerospace is a piece of professional kit from Breitling's collection that is probably right there alongside other names like the Navitimer, the Super Ocean, the Chronomat as being one of the most important collections for the brand, period. The Aerospace is the father of Breitling's professional series, and it's an innovative analog digital quartz watch that is made for pilots specifically, constructed from titanium. The professional series focuses on function over form, built for harsh environments, geared towards explorers, extreme athletes, and anyone who needs a watch that can take some abuse. The Aerospace features a high-performance Swiss quartz caliber for maximum reliability, and they're thermocompensated for rapid fluctuations in temperature that go along with aviation, making these incredibly accurate. A highlight of the contemporary catalog is the Aerospace B70 Orbiter. This was created to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the record-setting circumnavigation of the Earth in the Breitling Orbiter 3 hot air balloon, featuring a commemorative orange gradient dial and rubber strap with a titanium deployant clasp. And this is the design I think most when affiliating with the Aerospace. This was one of the watches that helped further the idea of a more luxury position digital watch, and beyond that was also a leader in developing the design style of the analog digital display. Now for this last watch, it's one that comes with questions of, is this really a digital watch? And it's a reminder that many people I don't think actually think about what is the definition of a digital watch. It's not that it has electronics in the package. It's not that it has a backlight or it uses any electronic ability to display digital timekeeping. It's just that it uses digital display for time. And this watch qualifies for that definition of a digital watch. This is the Lange Zeitwerk. So I have a video on this piece because I think there's so much that goes into this watch. If you're just talking about the movement alone, we're dealing with over 500 components. 500 components just for this movement. The Zeitwerk is arguably the greatest digital watch ever produced when you're talking about the complexity. And with that complexity also becomes one of the most expensive digital watches you will ever find on the market, having no electronics of any kind. So why this is a digital watch is how the time is displayed. You have these large Arabic numerals. On the left side, you'll have the hour display for one disc for those hours, and then two separate ones to display the first and second digits of the minutes. With this shift in time being one of the coolest things to watch in action. I love also seeing at the top of every hour where all of the discs can change. I love the way that this looks, and it's unlike anything else. Unless you're talking about the Semper Opera House clock in Dresden above the stage, as this was actually the influence behind this design and displaying the time. This was first introduced in 2009, and it is a 6-figure jump hour watch that is handcrafted in white gold, has over 500 components, as I mentioned, in the movement alone, with a constant force mechanism that helps sustain the energy down the going train and avoiding loss of amplitude when power is called upon for the digital displaying jumping. And avoids loss in amplitude that could obviously happen with all the power required to jump all the digital displays, especially at the top of every hour. It's a masterpiece on many levels, both for German watchmaking and just modern watchmaking more broadly. But all right, guys, that is our video here today, looking at some of the most iconic digital watches of all time. This is my list. There's some other watches that maybe could be considered here. I hope I didn't miss any that you might be thinking about, but if I did, leave some comments down below and give a reason why it should be included on a list like this. Also, if you had to pick one digital watch as the most iconic of all time, I think many people are probably gonna mention the G-Shock. If you do mention the G-Shock, say which version of the G-Shock is the most iconic. Leave some comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon, really do appreciate that. Also check out teddybalthestar.com. Teddybalthestar.com is an authorized dealer for over 35 brands. Every purchase from our site comes with quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. Also, if you have any questions about watches on our site, feel free to reach out to our team through email, also through phone call, and then live chat on our website in the bottom right corner. And also, if you're ever in the Cleveland, Ohio area looking to buy a watch, definitely stop into our boutique. We have people running that store that are just like you and me, watch enthusiasts. We'd absolutely love to have your business, as it allows us to keep doing what we're doing here. We love what we do. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.